Emma Collins, a woman in her early 30s, had long grown accustomed to the quiet rhythm of life in the small coastal town where she lived. Nestled in a modest cottage perched just a few blocks from the shoreline, her days unfolded with a predictable calmness that both comforted and, at times, isolated her. The scent of salt air mingled with the faint aroma of aged paper and ink from the journals she kept meticulously stacked on her worn wooden desk. These journals were more than mere collections of words. They were repositories of memories, reflections, and fragments of a past that she neither fully embraced nor entirely rejected. Her home was modest but thoughtfully arranged, each corner revealing traces of a life punctuated by moments both cherished and quietly mourned. On the mantelpiece, an assortment of weathered photographs leaned against the faded wallpaper, images of friends whose faces had blurred with time, a younger version of herself with a tentative smile, and a small collection of letters tied neatly with a faded ribbon. Each object held a story, a whisper from days gone by. Yet none were spoken aloud. Emma had learned to carry these relics not as burdens but as silent companions to her solitude. Every morning Emma would rise with the dawn, the soft glow of the early sun filtering through gauzy curtains. Her routine was simple but deliberate. After brewing a cup of chamomile tea, she would step outside onto the small porch, her gaze drawn instinctively to the horizon where sky met sea. The coastline was her sanctuary, a place where the steady rhythm of waves crashing against jagged rocks seemed to echo the unspoken cadence of her thoughts. These walks along the shore were her daily ritual, moments of quiet introspection amid the vastness of nature's embrace. Emma's footsteps traced familiar paths, the sandy beach where driftwood gathered in tangled heaps, the narrow trails winding through coastal scrub dotted with wildflowers, and the rocky outcrops overlooking the restless ocean. Each step was measured, as if navigating not only the physical landscape but the terrain of her own heart. The solitude of these walks was never lonely but rather a space in which memories surfaced unbidden. A photograph glimpsed in the mind's eye, a fragment of a conversation, a scent that stirred a long-forgotten feeling. Evenings found Emma curled in an overstuffed armchair by the fireplace, the flickering flames casting shadows that danced across the room. She would open one of her journals, the pages yellowed with age, and run her fingers over the familiar handwriting. Writing was both a refuge and a means of understanding, a way to give shape to the emotions she often kept carefully veiled. Her entries were a blend of observation and introspection, capturing the quiet beauty of her surroundings and the subtle stirrings within her own soul. Though Emma's life was marked by a gentle solitude, it was not one born of bitterness or regret. Rather, it was a deliberate choice to embrace a slower, more reflective existence after years spent navigating the complexities of relationships and ambitions that had left her feeling unmoored. The coastal town's unhurried pace suited her well, allowing space for the thoughts and feelings she had kept tucked away to surface in their own time. Yet beneath this composed exterior lay a delicate undercurrent of unresolved emotion. The mementos that adorned her home, the photographs, letters, and keepsakes, were reminders of chapters that had never quite reached their conclusion. They whispered of connections made and lost, of dreams deferred, and of moments when the fragile balance between hope and heartache had tipped precariously. Emma carried these memories with a quiet tenderness, neither clinging to them nor pushing them away, but acknowledging their place within the mosaic of her life. Her interactions with the townspeople were few but meaningful. The local librarian, Mrs. Caldwell, often exchanged knowing smiles with Emma, recognizing in her a kindred spirit shaped by a love of stories and solitude. Occasionally, Emma would stop by the small cafe near the harbor, where the barista, a young man named Liam, greeted her with a warmth that softened the edges of her reserve. These brief encounters, though sparse, were threads of connection woven into the fabric of her otherwise solitary days. Emma's evenings were also marked by the subtle rituals of home, preparing simple meals with care, tending to a small collection of potted plants that thrived under her attentive hands, and listening to the soft melodies of classical music that filled the quiet spaces. These acts, though ordinary, were imbued with a sense of mindfulness, anchoring her to the present while allowing the past to linger gently at the edges of her consciousness. On particularly clear nights, Emma would step outside to the porch, wrapped in a shawl against the coastal chill, and gaze upward at the vast expanse of stars. The constellations, steadfast and distant, seemed to offer a silent companionship, a reminder of the larger tapestry of existence beyond her own small world. In those moments she felt both the weight of solitude and the expansive freedom it afforded, a paradox she had come to accept as part of her nature. Despite the tranquility that defined much of her life, there were times when the stillness felt heavy, when the memories tucked away in her journals and photographs pressed insistently against the walls she had built. These were moments of quiet ache, when the past seemed to ripple beneath the surface, reminding her that some stories were unfinished, some questions unanswered. Yet Emma met these stirrings with a gentle resolve, choosing to sit with the discomfort rather than flee from it. Her love for journaling was both a balm and a bridge, a way to navigate the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. The pages bore witness to her inner landscape, capturing the nuances of feeling that words often struggled to express. Through writing, Emma found a way to honor the lingering shadows of memory, while cultivating a space for hope and renewal. As the days slipped by in their steady cadence, Emma remained anchored by the familiar contours of her life. The coastal town, with its ever-changing tides and quiet beauty, was both a refuge and a reminder, a place where the past and present intertwined in subtle, unspoken ways. In the embrace of solitude and reflection, Emma Collins continued her journey, quietly carrying the weight of lingering memories as she sought the elusive peace that had long eluded her grasp. One blustery morning, as Emma sipped her chamomile tea by the window, a small envelope slipped through the narrow gap beneath her front door. It was unassuming, plain cream paper, no stamp, no return address. Her heart quickened with a mixture of curiosity and caution as she bent down to retrieve it, fingers trembling slightly. The quiet calm of her morning was suddenly pierced by the unexpected presence of something unknown, something that promised to stir the still waters she had so carefully tended. Emma settled back into her armchair by the fireplace, the envelope resting on her lap like a fragile secret. She hesitated for a moment, then carefully broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. The handwriting was neat, familiar in its style, yet anonymous enough to mask the writer's identity. The letter began with a simple line. "Some memories never fade, even when we try to bury them deep." Those words struck a chord deep within Emma, awakening a pulse of emotion she had thought long extinguished. The letter went on to reference a day from her youth, a moment she had tucked away, a memory she had deliberately left unspoken. It alluded to a particular afternoon on the cliffs overlooking the sea, a time marked by laughter and silence, hope and unspoken fears. The letter's tone was gentle, almost wistful, but beneath it lay an urgency that unsettled her. Confusion mingled with a strange sense of recognition. Who had sent this? Why now? And why surface a memory she had worked so hard to keep at bay? Emma's mind raced through possibilities, each more improbable than the last. She considered old friends, distant family, perhaps even a stranger who had stumbled upon fragments of her past. But no clear answer emerged, only a swirl of questions that refused to settle. The letter's words echoed in her mind as she rose and moved toward the window, gazing out at the gray, restless sea. The waves crashed relentlessly against the rocks, mirroring the tumult within her. For years she had carried the weight of that day quietly, folding it into the tapestry of her life without allowing it to unravel her present. Now, with this single, anonymous message, the fragile balance was disturbed. Emma's fingers brushed over the stack of journals on her desk, each one a silent witness to her efforts to make sense of her past. The letter had pierced through the layers of reflection and restraint, stirring emotions she had long kept under careful guard. She felt a mixture of vulnerability and resolve, as if standing at the edge of a precipice between retreat and reckoning. The rest of the day passed in a haze of fragmented thoughts. Emma found herself retracing the contours of that long-ago afternoon, the sunlight filtering through the salt-tinged air, the sound of distant gulls circling overhead, the palpable tension beneath the surface of what had seemed like an ordinary moment. The letter's reference to that time was not vague. It hinted at something unresolved, something left unsaid that had lingered in the shadows of memory. That evening, Emma returned to her journals, seeking solace in the familiar act of writing. Yet her pen hesitated, caught between the impulse to preserve her silence and the sudden urge to confront the past. The letter had opened a door she had not intended to revisit, and the uncertainty of what lay beyond filled her with a restless unease. Sleep came fitfully, invaded by dreams that blurred the boundaries between past and present. Faces from her youth appeared, some blurred, others painfully clear, each carrying pieces of the story the letter had awakened. Emma awoke with a start, the morning light casting long shadows across her room, and a quiet determination settled over her. The past was no longer a distant shore but a tide rising unbidden, demanding attention. In the days that followed, Emma found herself scanning every corner of her home for clues, re-examining photographs, rereading old letters, searching for a hint of the letter's sender. Yet the mystery deepened rather than unraveled. The anonymity of the message made it all the more compelling. A ghost of someone who knew her story intimately yet chose to remain hidden. Her interactions with the townspeople grew tinged with a new awareness. Every familiar face seemed to carry hidden stories. Every casual conversation, a potential thread to unravel the knot of her past. Emma noticed the subtle glances exchanged in the marketplace, the lingering looks at her as she passed by, and the way the local librarian offered her books on memory and reconciliation without explanation. Despite the growing tension, Emma's outward life maintained its calm veneer. She continued her morning walks by the shore, the cold wind whipping her hair as she tried to anchor herself in the present. Yet beneath the steady rhythm of her footsteps, a storm brewed, an internal reckoning that made each moment heavy with anticipation. One afternoon, as she wandered the cliffs that the letter had invoked, Emma felt the weight of years pressing down on her. The rugged landscape stretched out before her, the sea pounding relentlessly below, as if echoing the turmoil within. She stood at the edge, the wind tugging at her shawl, and allowed herself to remember fully the laughter, the silence, the unspoken words hanging between her and someone she had once trusted deeply. The letter had cracked open a door, and Emma realized she could no longer ignore what lay beyond. It was not just a message from the past but an invitation, perhaps a challenge, to confront the stories she had buried, the feelings she had suppressed. The anonymous sender's choice to reach out in this way spoke of a connection that refused to fade, a bond forged in moments too significant to be forgotten. That evening, Emma sat at her desk with the letter before her, tracing the handwriting with a finger as if trying to summon the presence behind the words. The quiet of her home felt different now, charged with possibility and uncertainty. The peace she once knew was disrupted, but within that disruption lay the seeds of something necessary. A reckoning with herself and the echoes of a past that still held her heart captive. Though the letter brought confusion and unease, it also stirred a flicker of hope, a chance to find clarity, to understand and perhaps to heal. Emma knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, that the walls she had built around her memories would be tested. But beneath her apprehension, a quiet strength began to take root, an acknowledgement that some stories, no matter how deeply buried, demand to be told. As night fell and the sound of the sea whispered through the cracks in her window, Emma folded the letter carefully and placed it among her journals. It was a beginning, a fragile, uncertain step toward facing the past and the emotions it had long concealed. The anonymous message was no longer just an unexpected intrusion. It was a catalyst, beckoning her to move beyond the quiet solitude she had known and into the uncharted territory of remembrance and discovery. The morning after the letter's arrival, Emma found herself standing at the edge of the town's worn cobblestone street, her breath visible in the crisp air as she hesitated before stepping forward. The decision to revisit places long avoided was not one she took lightly. Each familiar corner carried echoes of the past, echoes she had carefully kept at a distance for years. But the letter had unsettled her, stirring a restless need to confront the memories she had so delicately folded away. Her first destination was the small cafe near the harbor, a place she had once visited frequently, though her presence there had grown rare over time. The bell above the door chimed softly as she entered, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the salt-tinged breeze that swept through the open windows. Liam, the barista, looked up from behind the counter, surprise flickering in his eyes before settling into a warm, familiar smile. "Emma," he said softly, setting down a steaming cup of coffee before her without her asking. "It's good to see you." She nodded, grateful for the kindness but feeling the weight of the past pressing against her chest. As she sipped the coffee, her gaze drifted to the faded photographs adorning the cafe walls, images of fishermen, families, and gatherings long past. Each picture was a fragment of the town's history, much like the fragments of her own story she was beginning to piece together. Emma's next steps led her to the old community park, where the swings creaked in the wind and the scent of damp earth filled the air. It was here years before, that she had shared laughter and secrets with friends who had since drifted away. The bench beneath the ancient oak tree, scarred by time and elements, bore witness to countless conversations, some joyful, others heavy with unspoken truths. Sitting there, Emma felt a swell of conflicting emotions: nostalgia for the carefree moments, regret for bridges burned, and a quiet longing for connection. She traced the rough bark of the tree with her fingers, recalling a particular afternoon when words hung between her and someone she once trusted. The memory was sharp, tinged with both warmth and pain, a reminder of the complexity woven into her past. Her journey continued with tentative visits to familiar faces, old friends who now carried the subtle marks of time and distance. Each encounter was a delicate dance of recognition and restraint. Some greeted her with open warmth, their eyes reflecting shared histories, while others offered polite nods, their expressions guarded. Conversations were measured, often skirting around the deeper undercurrents that the letter had stirred. One afternoon, Emma found herself at the doorstep of Mrs. Langley, a woman who had been a steadfast presence during her youth. The elderly neighbor opened the door with a mixture of surprise and warmth, inviting Emma inside without hesitation. Their conversation unfolded slowly, touching on the passage of years, the changes in the town, and the quiet persistence of memory. As they spoke, Emma felt layers of emotion peel away: regret for lost time, anger at misunderstandings left unresolved, and a tender hope for reconciliation. Mrs. Langley's gentle words offered comfort and perspective, illuminating truths Emma had long avoided. The encounter was not a resolution but a step toward understanding, a moment of fragile connection that hinted at the possibility of healing. Throughout these visits, Emma grappled with the swirling tide of feelings: nostalgia that softened the edges of pain, regret that lingered like a shadow, anger at choices made and paths not taken, and an aching longing for what might have been. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry she was slowly unraveling, revealing the complexity of relationships that had shaped her. At times, the emotional weight threatened to overwhelm her. There were moments when tears blurred her vision, when the quiet solitude she once cherished felt like a fragile shield against the storm within. Yet, beneath the turmoil, a quiet resolve took root, a determination to face the truths long buried, to reconcile the fragments of her past with the woman she had become. Emma's evenings grew increasingly reflective. She poured her thoughts onto the pages of her journals, capturing the nuances of her emotional journey with a raw honesty that both surprised and unsettled her. Writing became a lifeline, a way to process the tangled web of feelings and memories that the letter had unleashed. On a particularly stormy evening, as rain lashed against the windows and wind howled through the trees, Emma sat by the fireplace, the flickering flames mirroring the turmoil inside her. She reread old letters, some from friends long lost to time, others from a chapter of her life marked by hope and heartbreak. The words carried a weight that was both comforting and painful, reminding her that the past was not a distant shore but a living presence within. Driven by a restless need for clarity, Emma began to piece together timelines, faces, and moments, trying to understand the story behind the anonymous letter. Questions multiplied. Who had reached out to her and why? What truths lay hidden beneath the surface of her memories? The search was as much about understanding herself as it was about uncovering the sender's identity. Her solitary walks by the shore took on a new dimension. The landscape, once a place of quiet reflection, now felt charged with significance. The crashing waves seemed to echo the emotional tides within her, the vastness of the sea a mirror to the depths she was beginning to explore. She found herself lingering longer at the cliffs, tracing the contours of the land that had witnessed so much of her history. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast a golden glow over the water, Emma encountered a figure from her past, Nathan, an old friend whose presence stirred a mixture of warmth and unease. Their conversation was tentative at first, words chosen carefully as they navigated the delicate space between familiarity and distance. Nathan's eyes held a quiet recognition, and though they spoke cautiously, there was an unspoken understanding that the past they shared still resonated. He mentioned the letter in passing, his voice tinged with regret and hope, hinting at stories left unfinished and feelings long suppressed. The encounter left Emma both unsettled and strangely comforted. It was a reminder that the connections she thought severed were still alive beneath the surface, waiting to be acknowledged. The emotional turmoil she felt was not just a burden but a bridge, one that could lead to healing if she chose to cross it. As days turned to weeks, Emma's journey into the past grew more intentional. She sought out old letters and photographs, revisiting the moments captured in ink and image. Each discovery peeled back another layer of her story, revealing the complexity of human relationships, the joys and disappointments, the misunderstandings and forgiveness deferred. Through it all, Emma learned to sit with the discomfort of conflicting emotions, to honor the full spectrum of her experience. She realized that healing was not about erasing pain, but embracing it as part of her narrative, allowing herself to feel deeply and honestly. Her path was neither linear nor easy. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, times when the weight of memory threatened to engulf her. Yet, beneath the surface, a quiet transformation was taking place, one born of courage, reflection, and a willingness to face the truths she had once feared. In the stillness of her cottage, surrounded by the tangible pieces of her past, Emma Collins stood at the threshold of change. The journey into memory was unfolding in all its complexity, marked by nostalgia, regret, anger, and longing, but also by the fragile hope that through acknowledgement and understanding, she might find a way to reconcile with the shadows that had long lingered within her. In the quiet moments that followed her return from the cliffs and the tentative conversations with old friends, Emma found herself drawn inward, compelled to examine the tangled web of memories and emotions she had begun to unravel. The journey into her past had stirred a tempest within her, one that demanded not only reflection but also a reckoning with the truths she had long avoided. It was in this space of vulnerability that Emma began to understand the necessity of forgiveness, not as a grand gesture but as a quiet, deliberate act toward herself and others. One afternoon, she sat in her favorite armchair with the letter from the anonymous sender resting on her lap. The room was bathed in soft afternoon light, the fireplace cold but inviting. Her fingers traced the delicate script, and she allowed herself to confront the feelings that had surfaced. Hurt mingled with understanding, resentment tempered by compassion. Emma realized that the emotional walls she had built were not impenetrable fortresses, but fragile barriers constructed from fear and pain. Reaching for her journal, she began to write, her pen moving steadily across the pages as she poured out thoughts that had long been confined to the hidden recesses of her mind. She wrote not only of the past but of the present, the ways in which holding on to anger and regret had shaped her experience, and how the act of forgiveness might offer a path toward release. The process was neither quick nor easy. It required patience and a willingness to embrace discomfort. But with each word, Emma felt the weight on her heart begin to lift. In the days that followed, Emma sought out conversations that had once seemed impossible. She reached out to Mrs. Langley again, this time with the intention of mending the rift that had grown between them. Their meeting was quiet and unhurried, marked by honest dialogue and gentle acknowledgments of past misunderstandings. Mrs. Langley's eyes glistened with tears as she shared her own regrets, and Emma found solace in the shared humanity of their exchange. Similarly, a call to Nathan opened a door to reconciliation. Their conversation was tentative but sincere, both acknowledging the pain they had caused each other, and expressing a desire to move forward with greater understanding. The act of voicing these feelings aloud brought a sense of relief, transforming the weight of unspoken words into a bridge of connection. Emma also turned her forgiveness inward, recognizing the ways she had been hard on herself, blaming for choices made in youth, for moments when fear had dictated silence. She began to speak gently to herself, reframing her narrative with kindness and acceptance. This internal shift was subtle but profound, enabling her to approach her memories without the harsh judgment that had long clouded her perspective. The process of acceptance extended beyond relationships to the very nature of memory itself. Emma came to understand that the past was not a fixed, unchanging entity but a living part of her present, a collection of moments shaped by perspective and emotion. By embracing this fluidity, she could release the grip of painful memories that had once defined her, allowing space for growth and renewal. This newfound clarity brought Emma a sense of peace that had eluded her for years. The familiar ache of lingering regret softened, replaced by a quiet confidence, rooted in understanding and compassion. She no longer saw her past as a burden to bear, but as a part of her story that had shaped her resilience and depth. With this peace came renewed strength. Emma felt emboldened to pursue creative projects that had long been dormant, painting scenes inspired by the coastline, writing stories that wove together threads of her journey, and even considering the possibility of sharing her experience with others. These endeavors were acts of transformation, turning pain into beauty and isolation into connection. Her daily routine took on a gentle rhythm of reflection and creation. Mornings spent walking the shore were now infused with a sense of gratitude for the present moment, the vastness of the sea mirroring the expansiveness of her own healing. Evenings found her at the desk, her journals open and her thoughts flowing with renewed purpose. Emma's interactions with the townspeople grew richer as well. She participated more fully in community events, finding joy in shared experiences and conversations that deepened her sense of belonging. The barriers she had once maintained softened, replaced by a genuine openness to connection and friendship. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Emma felt a profound sense of balance. The sky was awash with colors, soft pinks fading into deep indigos, and the air carried the familiar scent of salt and earth. In that moment, she acknowledged the journey she had undertaken, from the quiet solitude of avoidance to the courageous embrace of healing. The letter that had once disrupted her peace was no longer a source of turmoil, but a catalyst for growth. Emma understood that confronting the past was not about erasing pain, but about integrating it into the fabric of her life with grace. This acceptance allowed her to move forward with a heart unburdened by the shadows of yesterday. As the night deepened and stars began to twinkle overhead, Emma closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She felt the steady beat of her own resilience, the quiet power of forgiveness, and the gentle warmth of hope. The path ahead was still unfolding, but she now walked it with a newfound clarity and strength. Through reflection and honest conversation, Emma Collins had begun to heal the fractures within herself and her relationships. In doing so, she discovered that true peace arises not from forgetting the past but from embracing it fully, acknowledging the pain, celebrating the lessons, and opening the door to emotional freedom. The days that followed Emma's journey of acceptance unfolded with a quiet grace, as if the very air around her had shifted to welcome a new beginning. The coastal town, once a backdrop to her solitary existence, now seemed alive with possibility, a canvas upon which she could paint the next chapters of her life with intention and hope. Emma's cottage, filled with the tangible remnants of her past, had transformed into a sanctuary where memory and renewal coexisted in harmony. Embracing the lessons gleaned from her reflections, Emma found herself drawn to creative pursuits that had long simmered beneath the surface. The blank pages of her journals gave way to sketches of the shoreline, the jagged cliffs, the restless waves, and the delicate wildflowers that stubbornly bloomed amidst the rocks. Each brushstroke was an act of reclamation, a way to translate the emotional landscape she had navigated into something tangible and beautiful. Writing, too, became a renewed passion. Emma began drafting stories inspired by her experiences, weaving together themes of memory, loss, and resilience. These narratives were not mere retellings but explorations of the human heart's capacity to heal and grow. Through her words, she sought to capture the complexity of relationships and the courage it takes to face one's own history with honesty. Her creative endeavors were shared quietly at first, with close friends and a few local art gatherings. The response was encouraging, fostering a sense of connection that had once felt elusive. Emma discovered that by opening herself to others, she not only deepened her own healing, but also offered a mirror for those grappling with their own stories. The act of sharing became a bridge between solitude and community, enriching her life in ways she had not anticipated. Beyond her personal projects, Emma's engagement with the town expanded. She volunteered at the local library, helping to organize readings and workshops that celebrated storytelling in its many forms. These activities introduced her to new faces and rekindled old friendships, weaving her more tightly into the fabric of the community. The sense of belonging she cultivated was a balm to the lingering shadows of isolation. Her daily walks along the shore remained a cherished ritual, but now they were imbued with a lighter spirit. The sea, once a symbol of distant memories and unspoken pain, had become a source of inspiration and renewal. Emma often paused to watch the horizon, the sky painted with the soft hues of dawn or sunset, and felt a profound gratitude for the journey she had undertaken. One crisp morning, as she wandered the beach collecting smooth stones and shells, Emma encountered a group of children playing near the water's edge. Their laughter echoed across the sand, a joyful sound that stirred something deep within her. She smiled, feeling an openness to life's simple pleasures that had been obscured for so long. Back at her cottage, Emma arranged the stones on her windowsill, each one a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even amidst the tumultuous tides, beauty and strength could be found. This act, though small, encapsulated the transformation she had embraced, the ability to integrate the past into the present with grace and courage. In her moments of solitude, Emma often reflected on the letter that had set her on this path. What had begun as an anonymous message filled with mystery and unease had become a catalyst for profound change. It reminded her that the past is not a prison but a wellspring of wisdom, and that healing requires both courage and compassion. Emma's relationships, once marked by distance and silence, evolved into connections grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. She nurtured these bonds with care, recognizing that trust is built over time through openness and understanding. The friendships she rekindled and the new ones she formed enriched her life, filling it with warmth and support. As the seasons changed, Emma felt herself growing stronger, more attuned to the rhythms of both nature and her own heart. She embraced the ebb and flow of emotions with a newfound patience, allowing herself to experience joy and sorrow without fear or judgment. This balance was not perfect, but it was real, a testament to her resilience and growth. One evening, sitting on the porch as twilight deepened and stars began to emerge, Emma thought about the future with a quiet optimism. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She was no longer bound by the weight of unspoken memories or unresolved pain. Instead, she carried them as threads woven into the rich tapestry of her life, each one contributing to the woman she had become. With a gentle smile, Emma reached for her journal and began to write, not to unravel or question but to celebrate. She wrote of the lessons learned, the friendships cherished, and the creative joys discovered. Her words flowed freely, a testament to a heart unburdened and open to whatever lay ahead. Through her journey, Emma Collins had come to understand that embracing the past with honesty and compassion is the foundation for living fully in the present. The pain she once carried had transformed into wisdom, and the solitude she once sought had blossomed into connection. In choosing to face her memories rather than flee from them, she had discovered a deeper strength and a more profound sense of peace. Her life, once marked by quiet reflection and lingering shadows, now unfolded with a hopeful lightness. Emma had learned that growth is a process, sometimes slow, sometimes challenging, but always possible when met with courage and grace. In this new chapter, she embraced the future with openness, ready to write the next pages of her story with a heart both healed and hopeful. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.